Welcome, folks. As you might expect, we'll give it a couple minutes to let people start filtering in, but I'd like to invite you to answer a check-in question in the chat. What's something that you already knew about yourself when you were age 5, or what's something that hasn't changed about you since you were 5 years old? For those just joining, we have a check-in question that you're welcome to answer in the chat. We're going to give it until 5 after the hour to make sure we've got everybody here. So welcome, folks. As you join, you're welcome to answer the check-in question in the chat about what's something you already knew about yourself by the time you were 5 years old. And Andre's asking in the chat if other folks will be talking during this. I'll go over agenda in a minute, but there will be breakout sessions at about the half-hour mark where people will be invited to participate. But until then, you're safe to be in a noisy room. And we'll give it another 2 minutes or so. Thank you for all your answers in the chat, by the way. This is a fun check-in question.
Switch can't hear you.
I'm seeing not as many participants dinging as they enter the room, so I think we're ready to get started. Thanks everybody for coming, and thanks again for participating in the check-in exercise. If you did, if you haven't yet, you're welcome to, about something you already knew about yourself at age 5. Welcome to EDGI's 5th birthday party. Day after election day. Might be a little early to call it exactly EDGI's 5th birthday, but I think it's an approximate date. I wanted to do this check-in question because even though 5 is pretty young and there's a lot of learning and growing up ahead, and there's a lot of things that'll change about you as you grow, you're already you. And as EDGI turns 5, that's what I want to show you, not just what we've done, but how we work and why we do this work. I want to invite you into a space that's really special to me and to a lot of us here. I'm hoping to bring some of not just, EDGI accomplishments, but EDGI energy. And there's a lot of people here. EDGI, the Environmental Data and Governance Initiative, I should say the acronym straight out. There's a lot of us here who have been here for a while, people who've been here and then haven't had a chance to come back for a while. There's people who've been involved in supporting EDGI in its early times and up through the present. So I really, really appreciate you coming. We have a lot of EDGI members in chat as well. So if you have tech support needs, or if you have a question, or if you just want to DM somebody you haven't seen in a while, please feel free. We do have a code of conduct that's in the chat. If Sarah, if you want to paste that again, that'd be helpful. Thank you. Sarah Wiley is doing our breakout rooms and tech support hosting in the chat today. But I also want to invite you to bring your, the adjectives you might have applied to yourselves at 5 years old to this space. Come curious, come creative, come ready to ask interesting questions. Ask questions in the question time. We're going to end up with a pretty compact presentation. So if you have a pen and paper handy, that might be nice to save some of your questions to the end. And if it works for you and for your internet connection, I invite you to leave your cameras on so that we can all see each other's faces and reactions as we go. Agenda-wise, and Chris, if you'd like to pull that up. Today, we're going to have Chris talk about EDGI's work over the last year and a little bit of setting it in the space of the last 5 years, which is a very tall order, by the way. EDGI works across several working groups that are not necessarily easy to, everybody wants to talk about their various accomplishments. So trying to compress that into what the 15-minute slot that I've dictated is going to be very challenging, but we'll see how he does. Following that presentation, I'll go live with Marianne Sullivan just to talk about the work she's done volunteering with us across several years. And that at the half hour, we will open breakout rooms and you'll be able to hop between EDGI's different working groups to say hi, to ask questions, to help celebrate and learn about, what we've done, more details or the future. And again, Chris's presentation will detail what the different working groups are. So that should help you a bit if you want to write down a group that's especially interesting to you, to make sure you hop into that breakout room during that time. That'll be a 20-minute period at the end or towards the end. We will keep the presentations pretty short because we want to leave lots of room for you to chat with us and hear each other's excitement and talk about what we're really here to do. Finally, thank you very much for being here. I see so many different people who've supported EDGI, who've supported me personally, who supported EDGI's work broadly and the space that we're in. And I really appreciate it, and especially also the people we haven't met yet who are just joining today to find out a bit more about, what is this work? Who are these people? So I hope you get a good taste of it. I hope you stick around into the breakout rooms and get to know us a little bit more face to face. And with that, I'll pass off to Chris to start our presentation.
Thanks, Kelsey, and welcome everyone. I understand we have a range of folks here, people who are maybe involved in EDGI early on and are now coming back. Also, some of you who may not have been involved in EDGI at all and are just getting to know us. I've tried to gauge this for everyone, all these different folks that we've anticipated are gathering here today. And I hope that it is not just the right level of detail and overview to give you a sense of what we've been doing within the scope of 15 minutes I have. So the race begins. Well, I think my first thought here is just about how long it seems since we got started. 5 years ago, it does seem like it's a world away, and for a lot of reasons. But I do think we've grown. I mean, we've changed in those 5 years. We've developed an agenda. We've developed a better sense of what we do. We developed a more sustainable sense of what we can do. We've, I think, found our place in the world as an organization going forward. I mean, we've started out, and I think this really shaped how we began the transition to the Trump administration, a kind of a crisis, an environmental and civic emergency. And we were all just thinking at that time, oh, what can we do next? The very next thing that's going to make a difference, that's going to somehow enable us to push back against what we anticipated would happen with Trump and coming to Washington. I think we've learned a lot in that process, the 4 years that we've in which we've been seeing ourselves as pitted against the Trump administration, what's going on in that arena. We've learned also that they've really opened up fissures and demonstrated weaknesses in the larger landscape of environmental protection and environmental data. And I think that's where we found our footing in terms of longer term sustainable activities for EDGI. And going into the Biden administration, I mean, that has been a transition and a good one. I think it's been nice to have an administration that's a little more environmentally friendly. But we've also found a lot of work to do there in repairing, not just in repairing the damage, but in fixing those fissures and gaps and weaknesses that we see in the overall system of America's environmental data and governance. For those of you who are less acquainted with us, we have about 50 active members now involved on Slack and so forth, from academic institutions, also nonprofits, grassroots organizations, different kinds of groups. We're a variety of professions. We're social scientists and scientists. We're people involved in the nonprofit sector and volunteers from other walks of life, retirees, some of us. Most of us are volunteers. And a lot of the work that gets done is by people lending their own time. What brings us all together, this diverse group, is what we aspire to do, to hold governing agencies and industries accountable, to promote and also reflect these values and transparency and collaboration, community-centric data and research. And we do seek to model those same values in our own organization and work, which is also a part of the task that bring us together. I need to say something about what enables us to have some paid staff, and that is our funders and our fiscal sponsor multiplier. We made the transition last year. And I think we're both sides are pleased with that. We're also funded by the David and Lucille Packard Foundation, the Doris Duke Charitable Foundation, ESIP and CS&S, as well as all our volunteers are really our funders in a way, because they provide all that extra skilled labor that really makes EDGI tick. Just to give you an overview of the program areas, and I'll be going into a little more depth in each one of them. One of the things that EDGI has done and continues to do is monitor websites, especially the federal environmental agencies. Another thing that we've done is interview EPA staff in particular. That's who we started with, but federal experts to get their vantage point on what's going on now and what should happen in the realm of governance and data. We also have been working on a front we call environmental data justice to connect research and advocacy, our own, with principles of data justice that I'll talk a little bit more about. And then finally, we have part of our group looking at and scrutinizing our own organizational structure to think about how to make it, enable it to better live up to our values. A values-focused, non-hierarchical organization is what we keep aspiring to be, and I think making our way there. Although it is, it's a lot of work there too. Now, some of you may remember back in early 2017, maybe the first thing you heard of EDGI was about these data archiving events. This effort to save the data as the Trump administration was coming in there. People were worried that they would be the new leadership would go after vital environmental data that had heretofore been unprotected and unguaranteed. But so this was really a grassroots movement that happened across college campuses, and EDGI played a key role in it. We helped to design these events and coordinate the collection of the data and so on. Well, I think one of the things that's happened is, and you'll note this handshake icon now has a different set of descriptors to it. That's because our data-related activities have shifted in the last while. Now we don't really do that much archiving, and the passage has come through this group that EDGI helped pull together called Data Together, to have this kind of conversation about how better to steward data in terms of ethics, in terms of best practices, and also in terms of decentralizing the web. So decentralized web principles that this group became involved in, stating these principles, working with the Internet Archive on that. And subsequently, where we've gone in our data work has been especially looking at EPA's enforcement and compliance history online. It's big database for enforcement and violation information. And we've been trying to apply those decentralized web principles, some of them, to our work with this database, starting by mirroring it and then developing customizable ways into it that can really get to what I think a lot of citizens and communities and groups want to see from this data in ways that go beyond what the EPA interface allows. So this gets to our first working group, and you can see up here on the upper left-hand corner the breakout room that you can go to ask and find out more. So this is our environmental data justice working group. This has been a real commitment of EDGI, is to explore this notion of environmental data justice, which is coined actually by an EDGI member. Looking into what a justice-minded approach to environmental data would mean, among other things, how it might involve building better frameworks, coming up with alternative visions for how to create, to care for, and to share environmental data. We've, part of the work here has been writing academic papers, such as the one you see here. Other activities have involved webinars like the one posting you see here, where we brought together 6 groups involved in environmental data justice related projects, and they exchanged a lot of information, and I think it was a very fruitful conversation there. Among those involved were a group from Chelsea, Massachusetts, another the U.S. Indigenous Data Sovereignty Network. So getting these groups talking to one another and seeing what they can learn from one another. Now, environmental data justice, our working group on that has taken up the Environmental Enforcement Watch and used that sort of area, the database, the Jupyter notebooks we used for the customizable data to work with communities and develop data platforms and visualizations and so on that really speak more to what these communities and local groups need. We've also, in this group, the Environmental Enforcement Watch, or EW, has done its own reports and coming up with things like demonstrating the increase in violations in the Clean Water Act under Trump, the reduction in enforcement actions with the COVID rules that the Trump people put in place, and also various notebook or report cards based on the notebooks by congressional district. And now they're working with groups to develop these same kinds of report cards for individual watersheds. So that in connection with some of the watershed groups. So this has been a very fruitful area of work, sort of extending our data work from the archiving era. Another working group I want to introduce you to is web monitoring. In the first years of EDGI, our web monitoring team really became the authoritative voice nationally for what was going on with federal websites in the Trump administration, especially environmental websites. So they're the ones who came up with the most solid and widely consulted information, for instance, about the erasure of climate change language from websites across the federal government. And you know, they looked at all sorts of other angles of change as well. And so they have continued that work into the Biden administration and also bringing together a lot of their work from the Trump years. So they came up with this in the last year with a cumulative report called Access Denied on the changes under Trump, really pulling together the 4 years of transformation of federal websites. And again, the most authoritative numbers we have about exactly what the scale of change and the directions of change were. They're also moving into academic publication for a lot of this information. Some of the first articles out there in the scientific literature on this kind of federal, the content of federal websites. And then also making it available for other people to research these kinds of this kind of data on website changes through this federal environmental web tracker, which is a public data set of all the searching that they've done across the thousands and thousands of websites over the 4 years and beyond. So other researchers can now go in and do their own scholarship and investigation of website changes. So opening this whole frontier up for other researchers. And the other third working group is our interviewing and policy monitoring. The interviewing project has now taken on the rubric policy monitoring as well as interviewing in the expansion of its activities. But it broke a couple of stories through the interviews over the last 4 years. The impact of the Trump people on the career staff at EPA and also the decline in enforcement. Our reports, you can see the covers here, broke those stories, and we've also been publishing in academic journals and showing up at congressional hearings that were partly inspired by some of the revelations we turned up. Well, what this group has been doing more recently is we have started a website called People's EPA, People's EPA or APE, APE. It contains public histories of the agency, its origins, and various areas of its activity, like toxics and climate change enforcement. We're also beginning to put up our interview transcripts there from the over 150 interviews that we've done with EPA staff. We've got a repository, keyword searchable, of FOIAs from the environmental era from a host of environmental groups. And now we're also doing a regular news feed of what's going on with the Biden EPA. And you can find all of the news feeds from January on there. We've also carved out some separate projects and looking at various areas of environmental governance and environmental justice. So we're publishing articles on that, and also on children's health is another one of the special areas that we've been focused on in policy monitoring and interviewing. And finally, let me bring up as a part of that working group for the breakout rooms, you can go hear more about the Environmental History Action Collaborative, which is our newest working group coming on board starting in really late 2019, early 2020 to become a working group emerging out of the American Society for Environmental History and also an initiative to write an amicus brief for the Juliana versus US court case on climate change. They've been involved, or we've been involved in working on annotations and on annotations of Biden as well as Trump speeches and on op-eds and so on. Finally, our last breakout room is going to be combining our work in radical or alternative organization and communications. This has been a big concern of us over the last 4 years, and we're constantly visiting and revisiting these kinds of questions. Among the outcomes, more recently, we've been honing our non-hierarchical structure, working on employment and making sure that the terms of our, we have employees, making sure that the terms of their employment are as good as we can make them. And with benefits, and we look carefully at equity in salaries and in hiring and so on. And finally, we've in the last while, especially been able to expand our influence across various media spheres, and especially social media. You can see some the big followership and impressions and so on that we've been able to engage. And we also have kept up steady presence in news coverage and news articles with something like, I think we've alternated, we're still about 50 a year of news media coverage of our activities. So that's a whirlwind tour of what we've been doing, with an emphasis on the last year. And I'll now turn it over to, I guess we'll go on to the next slideshow. We're featuring one of our volunteers, and she's going to talk or be interviewed a little bit about her experience working with EDGI.
Thank you, Chris. That was really excellent. And it's my pleasure to introduce Marianne Sullivan, who has been volunteering with EDGI for quite a long time. And I'm just going to ask a couple of questions. And Marianne, do you want to tell us a bit about the kind of work you do with EDGI?
Sure. Thanks, Kelsey. Yes, I've been involved since January of 2017 with the Interviewing and Policy Monitoring Work Group. And through that work group, I've been involved in conducting interviews with people at EPA, with kind of data management and making sure those interviews stay secure and confidential. Lots of organizational tasks, sometimes working with students and sometimes working with other colleagues, writing papers, writing grants, lots of different research activities. It's really been wonderful, I have to say.
I have to ask, I mean, that sounds like a lot of work. What is it that makes you want to spend your time here doing that work when you could spend it anywhere?
Yeah. I guess, probably like a lot of us when Trump was elected in, I guess it was November of 2016, is that right? Yeah. Like a lot of us, I felt sort of adrift and concerned about the state of environmental governance. I mean, he had really promised to do damage to the EPA, and he was clearly not going to move us forward on addressing climate change. And I was worried, like so many other people, and I didn't really know where to put that energy. But luckily, Chris Sellers emailed me and said, "Hey, would you like to get involved in this group we're starting?" And I said, sure. And what I quickly realized was that it was a wonderful place to put all of that concern and fear and anxiety about the Trump administration, because it gave me a real focus, and it allowed me to actually feel like I was making an impact with this group of people. It was a wonderful group of people to come together with, because we had shared values, we have shared goals. I think we had sort of a shared vision of what we'd like to see for environmental data and governance in the United States. And so really to connect with those people with all of you at that time was so meaningful, and really kept me going during those 4 years of the Trump administration. And I do think we had an impact. We did start to help shift the conversation, I think, a bit around environmental data and governance in the United States. So it was the people, but there was more. I think there was more. It was also the work itself. I think when we got into interviewing people at EPA, it was just so interesting to hear their stories and to hear what was going on with them. It taught me a lot about the inner workings of the EPA, and all of the different programs that are in place in the United States to try to protect the environment and ensure the health of the population. And then I also think that for me, the diversity of people involved in EDGI has been really wonderful too, because I've never worked really with people like you, Kelsey, who have all this data and programming knowledge, or people like Sarah, who bring together lots of different skills. And it was just really inspiring to see the kinds of work that we could all do together as a group with our different skill sets. So those are the things that really kept me engaged with EDGI over the last several years.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing. I think in order to keep us mostly on track with schedule, because I just realized I miscalculated the number of minutes in an hour, I'm going to switch us into question and answers. But thank you so much, Marianne, and thanks
Kelsey.
so much for the work you continue to do.
Thank you.
So I'd like to invite folks, all of you, you're welcome to ask questions. You can use the hand raise function or raise your physical hand and I'll toggle between screens, or ask in the chat any way that's comfortable for you. And then following that, we'll head into breakouts at, I think 35 past the hour makes sense, so that we can have our 20 minutes in them. So any questions that are sort of burning or that you'd really like to put out to the whole group before we go into the smaller rooms to have the more specific questions? And I know it's been a fire hose of information. If you're new here, I'm sorry.
Hi, I'd like to ask a question. I'm sorry, I should have raised my hand maybe.
No, you're all good.
I'm very new to this and learning about EDGI. I noticed, based on looking at your Twitter feed and what we talked about so far, do you focus mainly on EPA concerns, specifically that agency? Do you look at NASA and say land cover monitoring and such as well? I'm a land cover land use person in the geography program, and I was just wondering if you focus on their data as well.
I forgot to mention, but any EDGI folks are open to answer. Yeah, go ahead, Gretchen.
So different working groups are a little bit different. I'd say that the interviewing working group is primarily focused on EPA, and right now the data team, the Environmental Data Justice / Environmental Enforcement Watch team, have been focusing primarily on EPA data. And I lead the website monitoring team, and I would say at least half of the, well, maybe not that many, but at least a third of the web pages that we monitor are from the EPA. And those are the ones that we check most frequently, just because they have, a significant impact on environmental governance. But we are monitoring NASA pages, NOAA pages. We have 13 different federal agencies that we monitor. There's at least some section of their website. But I'd say that the majority of our reports relate to the EPA.
Thank you.
Chris, I see your hand.
Yeah, and I mean, interviewing policy monitoring, we focus on EPA, especially with our interviews, but I think we've done also work on agency capacity that has gone beyond that, included the other scientific agencies, and including NOAA and Energy and Interior and so on. And NASA too, I think, was a part of that report, looking at the trends and budget and personnel and so on. So to that extent, yes, we've looked at those other agencies.
Okay, thanks.
And just to add on to that, from the Environmental Enforcement Watch perspective is we're very interested in kind of connecting this data on enforcement to other kinds of data sets. So we're looking at campaign funding and trying to connect that to these kinds of data sets. So that's one sort of general question that I was wondering for folks who are new here or people who were contributing early on in EDGI or are coming back is, do you have ideas about where we could expand, particularly under the Biden administration? Like, what would you like to see? And I guess that's sort of opening the floor back to you, Dudley, to say, like, are there data sets that you think we should be looking at or ideas that you think we could investigate?
I'll save you from answering just now because I think we probably want to open up the breakout conversations, which will give us a little bit more space to have more of these one-on-one interactions. Hopefully I didn't cut you off. But Sarah, if the breakout rooms are ready. So I think what's going to happen is you probably just got a pop-up with a breakout room. You are welcome to assign yourself to one of those rooms, and you should be able to move yourself around in between times. If you ever get lost, you're always welcome to come back to this main room. But I will see you at 55 past the hour for a quick closing at the end.
Kelsey, I'll just hang out here just in case anybody needs help getting to the rooms.
Thanks.
If anybody's confused about what the rooms are or what the groups are, feel free to just raise up and I can explain what, give you a reminder about what each topic area is. Yeah, Dudley.
Sorry, I was writing a message to you and now I'm a little lost. I think I want to head into the web. There's a group regarding web tracking.
Yeah, so that's number 2, web monitoring.
How do I, where do I look? Sorry.
Let me see if I can, if you look down at the bottom.
Ah, got it.
Yep.
Yes, good.
All right. Anybody else need a hand? It's good to see you, Susie.
Great to see you too, and see you soon.
Yeah. Bye. Phil, you all right? I'm supposed to go over to the EU room. I can't hear you.
I clicked on number 1, Sarah, but it's not putting me in there.
How weird. Let me see if I can force move you.
Oh, I see. Oh, join. All right. I didn't realize.
Oh. Muhi, do you want to go in a room or do you already know all these things?
I'll just hang out.
All right.
Yeah.
Sounds good. There's somebody's just joined. Hi, Chloe.
Hello.
Hi, are you just joining the event? We're in breakout rooms right now. I can help you join one of them and let you know what's going on.
Oh, no, I accidentally cut myself off. I have been here since the beginning.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
I just accidentally left.
No worries. Do you want me to assign you to a breakout room or do you want me to tell you what they are?
I don't think. Yeah, sure. If you could remind me what they are.
Okay, so there's 4 options. There's the one that's working on environmental data justice and environmental enforcement watch. That's number 1. Number 2 is the web monitoring group. Number 3 is the policy and interviews and the environmental historian action work. And then number 4 is our organizational committee, like how do we organize ourselves internally? That's called RAD.org and communications.
Awesome. I think I'll hop on to number 1.
Okay, great. I will assign you there.
Thank you.
Okay, Muhi, I think I'm going to head into room 1. I'll be back.
Sounds good. Yeah, if anybody else comes in, I'll guide them as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yep. Bye.
Hello.
Hi, Mark. How are you?
Oh, hi. How are you? Okay.
It's good.
Yeah. I've seen your name on a number of documents that prepared me for the Civic Science Fellowship. But this is the first time I'm actually able to be in a meeting with you. So it's nice to meet you.
Likewise, pleasure's mine. Were you in one of the breakout rooms earlier?
Yeah, I was just in the breakout room with Kelsey on EEW. And
Wonderful.
we were just talking about our fellowship and the work that we're doing so far.
Yeah, no, I'm so excited that you were both selected for that. So congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it. So we're getting started. Actually, the last couple of weeks have been, we meet every Tuesday, the Rita Allen program.
Yeah.
So we're just starting to delve into some classes, which is really good and very supportive.
Wonderful. Well, I know that they'll be in breakout rooms for another 9 minutes. So if
Yes.
you'd like to join another one, feel free to hop into another breakout.
Okay. And how do you pronounce your first name? I'm sorry.
Muhi.
Muhi.
Thanks for
Okay.
asking. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Muhi. Okay. Okay. Nice to have met you. And thank you for all
Likewise.
your support. I appreciate it.
Yep. Bye.
feel like I'm encountering you in the hallway. Okay, great. I see. You're welcome to join another one of the breakout rooms in the meantime, using that same breakout rooms tab, or you're welcome to stay here. I just popped out to grab a call, actually.
Welcome back, everyone. Just in case there are people still in their breakout rooms for the rest of the minute, I'm going to hold off on the rest of the presentation for a minute.
Sorry if that abruptly yanked everybody out of their rooms. I thought it was going to give the 60-second warning and then we were all suddenly here.
But I see people in the rooms, so I think it didn't. It's very confusing.
I got a warning.
I clicked the little X to get the warning out of the way, and it sent me back.
I think it's a little buggy. It also labeled me with Shannon's name earlier, and I didn't notice that I was Shannon until John was like, "You're not Shannon." So I don't know what's going on.
At any
It
rate,
happened to me too, actually.
I think we're all here now. Chris, would you like to share our last little visuals? We just have one last slide. But essentially, it's just a big thank you to everybody here. We really, really appreciate you being here and coming to celebrate with us and coming to see, you know, what's going on with the different groups, whether you've been around for a long time or a short time. And I would be remiss without adding a final check-in question, which I would love for you to share in the chat. Just something that you heard today that resonated with you, or something that made you excited about, you know, having come to this event. So please feel free to share in the chat. And as you do, thank you so much, Sarah, for sharing the links in the chat too. As you can see, we accept donations. That's always really, really helpful. It's not so much like that is a big ask, is that it means a lot to us when we get a couple. So that's one of the links we put up here. But two other links that also are really, really important to us. The newsletter sign up, Shannon has been doing a ton of work on making sure that we give people updates on our work more regularly. That's one of the things that's been traditionally a struggle for us, is doing a lot of work and then forgetting to tell all the people who should know about it. So we're trying to be better about, you know, blogging about the projects we've done and making sure they go to an email list. And if you would like to be one of the people who learns about things, we have a Twitter, but we also have a newsletter, and that can go direct to your inbox. And then Shannon and Gretchen have worked pretty hard recently on building a volunteer interest form to help us get better at when people show up and they say, hey, I might want to get more involved with EDGI. You know, that's pretty much how most of us get here. Not everyone. We also do employment searches that are broader than that. But we get a lot of different people who show up from all walks of life who say, hey, I think the work you're doing is really interesting. Can I get involved? And we try to talk to each of those people one-on-one and see how they can get best plugged in and be a part of the work, but also how we can best support them, how we can be a network that helps people achieve whatever they're trying to in terms of, you know, whether they're trying to build a career in this space in policy and environmental governance, or whether they're trying to, like Marianne, just trying to take some of that political energy that's very pent up in us when we get politically frustrated. I'm very frustrated with our local elections yesterday, and have somewhere to channel it into that feels really useful and impactful. And I think our work really is very impactful. So I would love to see folks bringing in that volunteer form. I think I mentioned earlier, although I possibly forgot, if anybody wants to stick around after, I know a lot of people here are alumni who haven't seen us in a while. So you're welcome to stay on afterwards for an after party. But other than that, just thanks so much for being here. Really appreciate it. And I'm really enjoying seeing you responding in the chat to what resonated with you today. So thanks all. And since we've now hit 6 o'clock, the official event is now over if anyone wants to just hang out.